We'd love to tell you what this podcast is about, but the truth is, we don't know. The CW Pod, at home on Iowa Everywhere. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Iowa Everywhere.
Channel Seed, seedsmanship at work.
All right, guys, and welcome to a new episode of the CW podcast here. We're a little weekend edition, and as you've come to know with this show over the last few weeks, we don't ever really know which direction I'm going to go, but we do things that I'm passionate about and things that I think are fun. And I also want to highlight cool Iowans, and we're doing a lot of that today. I want to thank our sponsor, Circa Sports. Download that Circa Sports app. And get your baseball betting go. I like to do the NASCAR betting myself. I feel like there's a ton of value in there. I'm on a hot streak too. I got to knock on wood. I've picked like 4 NASCAR winners this year, which is really, really, really difficult to do. So I'm probably would be better off just not betting again the rest of the season. I want to introduce my guest today. It's a guy who I'm meeting for the first time right now. And we actually were starting to talk before this thing, and I was like, okay, we just got to press play because we're gonna use up all the good stuff. But he's a guy who we have a similar background. He was we'll have to talk about being a Keith Murphy intern. He worked. Were you Hassel's intern?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, that's how I got
God.
my internship there was through Chris.
Oh my God, you poor bastard! Poor bastard. His name is Blake Anderson, and Blake is, it's a job that I always tell Chris. Blake has like my dream job, so I always just wanted to be in racing. That's all I kind of just fell into the Iowa State thing in Cyclone Fanatic. That was never my. I was gonna go to Iowa State, and then my plan was to go off to Charlotte or Daytona and work in racing in some capacity, and it never really happened for me. Here I am doing the Iowa State thing, and then Blake's an Iowan who gets to work in racing full time, and I'm very envious of you, Blake. I've enjoyed watching your career blossom, and I love now that we have all this great technology. I could watch you call races on Flow all the time. So, real quick, describe your job to our listeners here who may not know who you are and what you do.
So I work for the All-Star Circuit Champions. We're the oldest touring 410 wing sprint car series in the country, founded in 1970. And they raced for a couple years, and then the oil crisis hit, and they didn't restart until 1980. So a little bit older than the World of Outlaws, actually, kind of the original touring wing sprint car series is what we say. And I call all of our races. We travel. I think we're at 12 or 13 states this year. We're a little lighter on the schedule this year. We're 50 some odd races this year. I think we're at 51 now. The last couple of years, we've been over 60. But I do all of our announcing and then our marketing behind the scenes, a little bit of our website stuff. But a lot of my day-to-day is interacting with all of our partners with the All-Stars. And we've got a lot of great partners. And as you know, well, on the Cyclone Fanatic side and your racing background, it's hard to do anything in our sport without having partners. And they allow us to do a lot with our points fund has really grown the last couple of years. Our series champion gets $80,000, which when we got the series, when Tony bought it, that's when started. When Tony Stewart bought the series in 2015, our series champion got $35,000. So it's been a nice increase. And I feel like the last couple of years, we've started to kind of reap the rewards of all that hard work that we put in 2015, 16, 17.
Well, I bought the video game.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, bought the video game. That's you in the video game, right?
Yeah, that was very interesting to sit in a studio with these guys and just do lines and read them over and over and over.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that, and I've read pieces on like when the old NCAA football, like bringing Brad Nessler in and having him do that for like days at a time. How many days did it take to do the video game?
It was 2 days of, it was this thick of, hey, you need to read this line and put more emphasis here. It was interesting. I never thought I'd get to do a video game, but here we are.
Yeah. Well, it was a great game. I've since moved on. I conquered that one. I was an Outlaws champion, or not Outlaws. I was the All-Star champion, and then now I'm on that Outlaw
game,
late model game. That's like the It's the same game as you guys had though. Like
Yeah,
everything's the exact same.
the same people made it. They just
Oh,
got
okay. Is
bought
that it?
by iRacing, so then they had a partnership with the Outlaws through iRacing. I've got it. I haven't installed it yet because my Xbox only allows me to have like 3 games on it because I didn't know what I was buying when I got it. And I got the small memory one, so
Yeah.
I need to get a new one eventually.
So yeah, we'll get into our racing disciplines and stuff because I'm a late model nut. You're a sprint car nut. Those two. There's a little bit of a friendly rivalry between the two types of cars. But so where did you're a big Hawkeye fan?
Yep.
I know that. Where did you grow up? How did you meet Hassel? How did you kind of get into this world?
I grew up in Newton, so just not too far from where you are, actually.
Okay.
And that's where I graduated. Graduated in 2008, went to DMAC in Boone, and that's kind of where my connection to racing lies is Boone. My dad grew up in Boone, and that's where Boone Speedway is. So I grew up going to Boone Speedway pretty much every Saturday night, Marshalltown every Friday night, Boone every Saturday. Dad was at the first race at Boone back in 1967, and we had a car dealership in the family, and they sponsored a car out there that raced at Boone Speedway each week. So at heart, I'm a modified guy, late models.
Okay.
I really love that. I just happen to I joke with the flow late model people. I found the light and moved to sprint car racing. I give them a hard time, but I mean, shoot, I'm working 2 late model races next week. But
Where are you at next week?
We are at Eldora and Brownstown in Indiana with Flow Racing Night in America.
Oh, that's amazing. So,
So
you'll be in Marshalltown coming up here before
Yep.
too long.
Yep, Marshalltown, Davenport next month.
I kind of feel like I was just kind of a little ahead of my time because if I would have just killed for the opportunity that the flow guys and like with dirt on dirt, like that technology, I was about 10 years ahead of that when I was announcing races. So what I was doing was I was PA at Adams County and Corning. I did pit reporting mostly, actually, and then I did twice a week out in I-80. I'm sure you've been out there.
Yeah,
Well,
rest
they're
in peace.
closed now. The Kaziskis were my bosses. And then I would always do I'd always get a random race like where they'd pick me up and they'd call me. And then I also was doing guy I'm sure you know, Toby Cruz.
Oh, Toby's my mentor, one of them. I mean,
there you go. Me and
going.
him did this show on MediaCom that lasted. It didn't last very long. It was this terrible show, like trying to do what you guys are doing on Flow now, but we were like, the technology again just wasn't there. Where we would basically take like a tape of like a national modified race, and we would call the race like from the studio.
Okay.
And they called it, God, what was the name of this show? It was like Midwest Speed Zone or something. It was just
I
awful.
vaguely remember that now.
Yeah. So that was like me kind of trying to cut my teeth. And I know how hard this world that you're in is to get into. So how do you meet Tony Stewart? How do you get this gig?
So through high school or at the end of high school, I started announcing at Boone when I was a sophomore in high school. They had an opening and my dad made me take it reluctantly. I was like, I don't want to do this. And he made me do it.
That's awesome.
So I started announcing there when Toby was actually working for IMCA at that point. So he was traveling a lot. So I was working with Denny Grabenbauer a lot, who's a fantastic announcer. And he and Toby, in my opinion, are 2 of the best together. Yeah. And Toby would be there every couple of weeks. And I was just calling the Dwarf cars. And at that time, they were called front wheel drives, the Hornets. Now are Sport Compacts that IMCA calls them. And I ended up getting a gig at Knoxville my freshman year of college and announced at Knoxville I was there for 4 years with a year USAC in between when I was in college and moved down to Charlotte. And through those years, I got to know Roger Slack very well, who was the promoter at Eldora Speedway Roger was there for 9 years, I want to say. And I was working for the World of Outlaws in their office, just a marketing job right out of college, my first job out of college. I wasn't hardly doing any announcing. And I was actually with my parents in Wisconsin. We'd gone to the Big Ten tournament in Chicago to watch Iowa lose in the first round, as they usually did there for the longest time.
So for a while, yeah.
My parents were moving to Wisconsin. Dad took a new job, so they're looking at houses. And Roger Slack calls me and says, "Hey, Tony just bought the Owl Stars. They got a marketing job, an announcing job. You really need to go interview for this job and give it a look." And I did. And when I took it, ended up getting the job in 2015. I said, I'll do this for a year or two, and then I'll move back down to Charlotte, get back into the NASCAR side of things. And here we are. This is our 9th season with this series, and I'm still sitting here doing it.
I get it though, because you become immersed in it. It becomes part of you. Like you put so
Absolutely.
many hours and I don't think that probably most of our listeners to what we're doing here probably understand the windshield time and just everything that goes into what you do.
Yeah, there are days where you just are like, oh man, I got to drive 8 hours today, or nights where you got to drive 3 hours to your hotel to get 6 hours of sleep, and then get up and drive another couple hours to your racetrack. And in between that, I got to find time to do notes for our broadcast the following night, so I sound like I know what I'm doing. And
there's no private jet. Tony doesn't give you a private jet.
He does, and I flew on it a couple times. And then when he was racing sprint cars. And then we got a pace truck, and I started to have to drive the pace truck to the racetrack, which worked out okay. It's better than driving my own car.
Yeah, that's not a bad gig. Yeah,
no,
that's not a bad deal. What's he like behind the scenes? Because we all know Tony is this gruff. He actually wrecked me in a go-kart. Yeah, really. That's actually
surprising.
I have footage on YouTube. It was the Knoxville did a deal where they had like a celebrity deal out at the dirt track. The
Slideways. I was probably announcing that.
Oh,
I did that for years. Yeah.
I got the worst car. Okay. And I'm not even making it up. Like, I got the single worst car out there. And I was so excited. Like, all these people out there, they didn't even know what they were doing. Like, their media outlet just made them go to this thing. For me, this was my opportunity. Okay. Like, Kyle Larson's there, Jeff Gordon's. This is my opportunity to show these guys what I can do. And I got the worst car. And I don't think Tony liked that I cut him off. And he literally, I saw that look in his eye. He looked at me, turned into me, and spun me out. I have it on YouTube. It's one of the highlights of my life.
At least you didn't get the helmet thrown at you. You got that going for you. That got brought up this past weekend at Bristol. But, he's great. I mean, he kind of lets us do our own thing. He kind of has always told us, hey, we hired you to do a job. If you're not hearing from me, that's probably good. And he's pretty busy now with his NHRA stuff with the drag racing now, especially now that he's not only owning the team, but he's doing some top alcohol stuff as well. Mm-hmm. We hear from him on occasion. I was texting with him the other day, but usually when I text with him, it's about his cars and about what he's getting. I bother him about what car he's buying.
I love it. I love it.
He's good stuff.
Gearheads. Yeah, what an icon. I mean, that's cool. I don't think I could work for Tony Stewart because I would just be awestruck all the time.
I always tell him that he was one of my favorite drivers growing up. He wasn't my favorite NASCAR driver, so I always tell him he was my second favorite NASCAR driver. Let him know, just not quite good enough to be my favorite.
What I admire about you is I got burnt out from that lifestyle, and I didn't even do it to the extent that you do. I mean, I was just a college kid and running around the Midwest in the summers, and it just, I got burnt out because I had been turned down by so many entities, MRN, PRN, NASCAR. Like, I tried to get internships, and I kept getting turned down. And a lot of times I would get frustrated because I knew my credentials were totally worthy. But the fact, again, you got to realize, Blake, I was a white guy back in the Drive for Diversity and all that. Yeah. I had no chance at a lot of these things. And it's great because the sport's come such a long way. And I landed on my feet. But it started to really take away my love of auto racing. And that's when I just quit doing it. I just said, I'm going to be a fan of racing. And I regret it to a point because there's nothing like the feeling of calling a race.
Yeah.
Like, play-by-play of racing is just different than anything else because of all the variables that you get to pay attention, especially with what you're doing in sprint car racing. I mean, I have a feeling from a guy who's done it to another one, like, you just come alive and nothing else matters once they throw the green flag.
That's absolutely right. And I hear you on the getting burned out side of things. I mean, that's kind of where I was getting that way when I moved to Charlotte as I was trying to find a job in racing. I mean, when I moved to Charlotte, pretty much the only reason I moved to Charlotte, I was mad at my parents at the time because I was announcing at Knoxville and I wanted to finish the season after I graduated college. And my parents were like, you're not going to find a job in racing sitting in Des Moines, Iowa, sending applications. It's just going to get filed away. So they moved me to Charlotte. And
they were right.
Exactly. And I had some connections down there through some sprint car people, and I got a good deal on a house. My good friend, he had a house down there from when he raced some Xfinity stuff and had moved back to Indiana to do some USAC stuff. So he let me rent a room at his house, which was very, very good. But they were right. And I got down there, and I've never been really depressed, but man, when you're down there for 8 months trying to find a job and you just get turned down time after time after time after time after time, it starts to get the point where you're like, man, what am I doing down here? Am I not worthy? Exactly like you were saying. I was burned out. I started to kind of not care. And then I just so happened to get the right break at the right time. And that's all that's all it takes in this sport. You just got to get your foot in the door.
Yeah. And then once you get that opportunity, you got to prove that you're a hard worker and you're trustworthy. And you've obviously done that, being that you've almost been here for 10 years. Do you, when you're driving from town to town, do you ever, I don't know, look around and be like, do I want to, I know you're happy, but I guess it can be like, my deal was different because it was like, I was getting like $75 a night, and then it didn't even cover my gas half the time. This is your full-time career, but it can be lonely on that road.
Yeah, absolutely. There are times where you're like, do I just take a job back in Des Moines, move back home, announce
Go to
Saturday
your
nights.
games.
Exactly. Announce Saturday nights at Knoxville Raceway, get football season tickets, and go to Iowa games and just live a quote unquote normal life that we kind of joke about. There are absolutely times, especially for me. I always joke with friends back home. For me, my burnout period hits the first week of September when Iowa football starts up, and when my buddies are going to games, whether they're in Ames or they're in Iowa City, and sending me Snapchats and pictures from tailgates, and I'm getting ready for a race, or we're racing, or really when Iowa's playing, when we're racing, I struggle focusing sometimes.
I was the same way. It's always harder for me to focus on racing when the other stuff starts, because now it's because of my career, and there's only so many hours in a day, but that made it difficult. Are you at the point now where you're like a lifer? It's not necessarily in your current spot, but like, because the thing about racing is once you're in, you're usually in. And I was listening to the Dale Jr. download this week with a bunch of them who were like 30, 40-year veterans in the racing business. And like, do you love it that much where you think you want to be doing this when you're in your 50s and 60s?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe in this role, I'd like to at some point transition to the promoting side of things. That really fascinates me. I feel like there's a lot left at a lot of racetracks across America that have a lot of potential that maybe aren't capitalizing on that because they just aren't thinking quite outside the box enough. And I'm in a unique position because I get to travel and I get to take ideas from different racetracks that I see. Hey, this works here in Ohio. This works in PA. This works in Iowa. Why can't we do this at XYZ racetrack? I'd like to do that at some point, slow down and not be on the road 100 and some odd nights a year for sure.
Well, if you ever need to fill in, I can help you out.
I got a recommendation. Yeah.
I'll drive to Ohio and knock out a couple
beautiful Attica, Ohio.
Is that where you're at right now?
That's where we're going tonight. And one stoplight in town and fairgrounds. It's a neat place.
That's the cool part about my uncle and I he had a motorhome, and we'd go for weeks at a time and just follow the late model series around when we were kids. Like, you're not in extravagant places.
No,
that's not where like the great dirt tracks. Like I like Wheatland. That may be my favorite. Wheatland, Missouri is the Lucas Oil Raceway.
The Diamond Racetracks.
Yeah, great late model track. And my dad and I went to it for the Show Me last year, and we'd never been there. And we pulled up on the thing, and I kind of like, and you'd think that I had learned by now. In my mind, I'm like, oh man, Wheatland, Missouri is this like metropolitan area. It's got this great.
Nope.
There's literally nothing in the town except the racetrack, and that's half the places you go to.
We drove. I've never been to a race at Wheatland, but 2 years ago we raced at Lake Ozark Speedway, which Lake of the Ozarks, and then we raced in Kansas the next night. So we drove across southern Missouri there and went through Wheatland of all places, and I couldn't. Literally, Wheatland is the racetrack. I mean, that's it.
And and it
nothing
looks like a
around
NASCAR
it.
track.
It does. It's almost like they threw a dart at a dartboard and just said, wherever this hits, that's where we're building this racetrack. We just need a lot of land.
I completely agree with you, though. So we started our Always Race Day website during the pandemic. Yep, and Connor runs it for me, and like some of the experiences that we've had, and I'm with you about getting some younger guys in the roles that you're talking about. Just trying to get into the pits and get media credentials at these tracks with like series that you would think would be all about getting as much like we want to be there posting videos with your drivers and promoting this thing, and you can't even get an email back, or they're making you pay to get in there after you've driven for 5 hours to get there. It's incredible to me. So I think there's, especially with what you guys are doing at Flow, as a fan of the sport, there's never been more potential. And then as a businessman and all this, it's just for sponsorships. Like you can charge more now. Like I was watching the MLRA in Davenport last night, and like
great race.
It was an awesome race. And my guy, do you know Billy Rock? Do you know my guy Billy Rock?
I don't. Was he announcing?
Yeah, so he's an old Adams County Speedway guy
good.
Like me. Yeah,
I sent Michael Rigsby a text last night as I was watching the MLRA race. I said, who's announcing this MLRA race? Like he knows his stuff. He was entertaining. Yep. And Michael said, I'm not sure.
We used to announce together in Corning, me and Billy.
Okay.
Did. He's from my hometown. Yeah, so he has your role with the MLRA for the Lucas Oil. But it's just there's just so much untapped potential too, and just across the board with this. And like I just the hard part is these jobs are so difficult to make money in. Like there's just only so much money in racing. But do you get the sense when you travel around that people are open to new ideas?
Finally, I feel like we're starting to crack that shell a little bit. I mean, 2 or 3 decades too late, but as you know, dirt track racing has always been very, very slow to evolve on that side of things. Like we're very stuck in our ways. This is how we've done it for 50 years. Why do we need to change? And sometimes I hate that. And then sometimes I have to remind myself, hey, I'm being that way. I need to open up a little bit and let some people do their job.
Do you guys still get any, I don't know, bad feedback from Flow being like you're putting the races on TV and now nobody's going to come? Do you get that?
Occasionally, yeah. And I just, I could vent on that, Chris, for an hour on how I don't think that it affects the crowd at all. I think it honestly helps. To me, if you run a good show, Marshalltown Speedway is a prime example of that. I get stopped by people all over the country, sprint car people. Sprint cars don't rate. Marshalltown doesn't have any open wheel shows and they tell me how awesome Marshalltown is and how they got to get there. And without the advent of Speed Shift and now into Flow Racing, they'd have no idea what Marshalltown Speedway was. It'd just be this local Friday night track in Marshalltown, Iowa that is an hour north of Knoxville, and they have no reason to ever know what it is.
That's why I ended up like wanting to go to Wheatland so bad, because I'd seen the Diamond of Dirt track. Oh my God, I got to see this for myself. Yeah, you're right. And the thing about it, so like when I was a kid, I keep referencing my childhood, but we were big Billy Moyer fans, still am. I always call him Dirt Track Jesus. But we would clamor to go all over the country to find wherever Moyer was racing, right? Well, what you guys at Flow and to an extent Dirt Vision have done for me is now I have constant exposure to these names and your sponsors, from a business standpoint, to your sponsors, that when you see them once or twice a year, it really doesn't stick. There's nothing sticky marketing wise about that. But now, like last night, I was fascinated, and this is so geeky inside late model racing. I wanted to see how Brandon Shepard did, because he's off on his own. He's away from Rocket. He's doing his own thing. Last time I watched him at the Spring Nationals, he didn't make the show in the MLRA, and I was just like, oh, yeah, Shepard didn't make the show. It was like a huge deal. I wanted to see, my point is, if I couldn't have watched that, I wouldn't have given a shit about this storyline going into it. And it's kind of like Major League Baseball in a way, what you do, because every night is a different episode of the soap opera. And now I'm open to that. And racing fans all over the country are open. It just makes it so much more appealing. And it's sure as hell not going to stop me from going to – you guys go to Knoxville this year, right?
Yep, we're at Knoxville on July 29th.
Yeah, and like your series 5 years ago, I wouldn't have known 90% of the drivers. I just wouldn't have because I don't have that exposure to it. Well, now it's like, man, I want to go and see these guys.
It's been pretty incredible. I talked to a lot of fans that'll tell me the pandemic was so big of in that June 2020 timeframe, we were racing every night in June there for 10 to 12 days because we were just trying to get races in to get to our minimum number for flow, thinking, man, we can get shut down any night. So we were in Texas, Oklahoma, and the Outlaws were hardly racing. Late models weren't going. We were the only show in town. So I think we grew our fan base a lot during the pandemic of people got to know our drivers, know who drives what way, and guys created a lot of fans, and I think that really helped.
And in return, they sell merchandise because of the TV broadcasts, and it's incredible. I just think that I first caught on with the Dirt on Dirt guys, so you can tell those guys that you got this guy in Iowa who's just like obsessed with. I'm so jealous, like that. I'm so jealous that I didn't come up with the idea that they did, and
it's genius.
In these niche sports, man, like, I mean, it's really no different than what I did with Cyclone Fanatic.
Absolutely. I mean, same thing.
Yeah, it's niche. You get some sponsors that really care about it, and you have a devoted group of fans, and you don't have to have 4 million people watching like a NASCAR race.
No, we need a couple hundred, and we have far more than that on Flow, thankfully. But, I mean, but our broadcasts have come a long way. I remember working some Dirt on Dirt broadcasts in like 2000. Oh, it'd have been 2009, 10 when they'd come to Knoxville. Mm-hmm. And where we are now compared to where we were then. I mean, the internet's just better too, and that allows you technology evolved, as you know, and that allows you to do so much more. But
I mean, shit, you guys have like drones. We got
I don't know if we'll have a drone tonight, but yeah, we had a drone at most of our races last year, and that just brings so many cool, unique views to these racetracks. I love when the drones are there because you can probably appreciate this. I'm a nerd. If there's a racetrack I've never been to, I like seeing the footprint of the racetrack, how it works. Where's the pit gate? How do they roll into the racetrack? Little things like that. Where do the fans park? Before a drone, you never saw that.
Yeah, I actually first noticed it at a race last year in Marshalltown because it's such a small track, and all of a sudden this, the guy who was like flying it was right next to me.
Oh, that's great.
My seat was my seat was over there in like turn one, and then whatever.
We'll have the drone back at our Flow Racing Night in America race, I hope, because last year I did a piece on the basketball arena over there. They flipped to it, the roundhouse.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I like highlighting these small towns too. It's really cool. I'm a huge fan of what you guys are doing. So tell me about. So we come from the Keith Murphy coaching tree. What's the most embarrassing thing Murph made you do?
Oh boy, I'm terrible about remembering stories. I enjoyed my time there. I mean, I think the toughest time there was Hassel and I going to state softball. It's 95 degrees in Fort Dodge, Iowa, and I'm nervous because I'm nervous about missing, a 1-0 game. Do I miss the only run? I mean, you're the intern trying to carry it. Hassel got pulled over on the way back and got a ticket for speeding on the way back from Fort Dodge. I remember that. My first day I had to go to Central to do a piece on their softball program with the Iceborg. And I was texting Hassel about the Iceborg yesterday because I said, I did not have the Iceborg reference on my bingo card for two guys named Chris.
Yesterday's episode was all over the place.
Oh, it was. I listened to it as I was driving to Columbus last night. We went to a hockey game, a couple coworkers. So I listened to it on the drive over, and the last half hour just had me in tears. I mean, it was all over the map.
You didn't have Iceborg potentially taking a dump
on a picnic table.
Yeah.
In a Clarinda, Iowa city park. No, I did not. But that and the fond memories of shooting baseball. A lot of, I mean, obviously, the summer you're doing iCubs games, high school baseball.
Yeah.
You're doing the stuff that Hassel doesn't want to do some of the times, or Zach for that matter.
Honestly, I don't know what this says about me as a human. Maybe I'm just lazy. But I love Murph. Like, Murph's one of my
He is awesome.
closest friends to this day. One summer there made me never want to do TV.
I'll say that. I when I was in college at UNI, that's what I was going to school for. I wanted to work in TV, and that showed me, like, it's kind of ironic now when I look back on it. That showed me, man, I don't know if I want to work these hours that Keith's got to work. We were leaving at midnight every night, and then I joked to my parents, now here I am, I'm working in dirt track racing, and I'm leaving a racetrack at midnight, driving to a hotel till 2 a.m. But you've
chased and you've stuck out your passion, and
that's very true.
Something I really admire about you. And that's why I kind of, like, during the pandemic, I'm looking around like, what the hell are we going to do? So we just got this idea to create Always Race Day. And it's Connor does a really good job. It's just so hard in auto racing. Like, it's just there's only so much money, right? And it's so very, very niche that it's hard to just create something like we're trying to do. But the racing thing, it's like in your blood or it's not. Like, I can't really describe it. Like, I'm always, like, taking my buddies to race, and they always have a good time, right? Like, I've never taken a guy to a race and he's like, well, that sucked. They always enjoy it. But to infiltrate them, to pay attention on a night-to-night basis is a totally different deal. But I agree with you. I do feel like motor racing in general, because of the pandemic, has taken a big step up the rung. Do you feel that on a local level?
Absolutely agree. I saw our crowds on the rise for a couple of years, car counts, and we're finally getting some races that pay what they need to be paying too. At the advent of Flow Racing Night in America, the High Limit Sprint Car Series, our All-Star Series, our purse has gone up probably 20% since then.
Great.
Just on races paying more, fans. And that's how, honestly, like, the fans being at the racetrack, I always say we got to have the fans at the racetrack. That's what allows us to pay more. The flow thing is kind of a asterisk on the side that maybe can allow a little bit, but the fans in the stands are what really butter our bread.
Well, and it's always been interesting to me too, because I remember when I was a kid, it was like a big deal if a race paid $10,000 to win.
Yeah,
right. And now it's like that's still kind of just like the standard, like, late model deal, at least, like 10,000. So, like, the expenses have gone up, the traveling's gone up, but the purses really hadn't for a long time. So we're on the precipice. I feel like
finally.
We're going to get more national sponsors, I feel like, into the field, and I'm looking forward to that just as a fan. Do you what I guess what's next for this? Because I mean, I can turn on Flow and I can watch 15 different races on a random Thursday night.
Like last night.
Yeah. I mean, tonight's going to be
we had Marshalltown and Davenport last night, and Delaware was racing last night on Flow.
Yeah, it's quite overwhelming, like, in the best way possible. What's next for the industry? I feel like we can go podcasting more. I feel like what do you think? Where is the next big boom coming?
Boy, that's hard to tell. I feel like we're finally, you mentioned it, we're finally on the rise, which is great. We need to be there. I feel like, I don't necessarily feel that live TV is really the way to go with dirt track racing. It's tough because NASCAR can rain out and they can, or have a rain delay, drive the racetrack and race an hour later, where us, if we get rain, it's sometimes more than an hour and it's so expensive. But I do feel like on the media side of things, we're finally growing in Flow Dirt Vision, allowing us to do some interest pieces to develop these superstars that have kind of been undeveloped for years and get to know these guys off the track, on the track. It's hard to say what the next big boom is, but I feel like it's somewhere, it's hidden within what we're doing right now. I feel like we're probably overlooking what our next boom is.
What's your, okay, you can't say Boone, Marshalltown, or Knoxville. What's your favorite track?
Kokomo.
Oh, interesting.
I love Kokomo. That's
seen it on Flow. I haven't been there.
Well, you'll see it on Flow. May 2nd, the High Limit Sprint Car Series goes there for $23,000. I'll go up for that. Oh boy, Eldora, I mean, I have a hard time saying Eldora because I'll group it in with that same Marshalltown boom. I mean, that's become my pseudo home track now because Tony owns it and I'm over there so often. I mean, most of our races I'm at Eldora as long as the All-Stars aren't racing. I'm usually there in some capacity. I love Kokomo. Really, the bull rings. Macon's a cool little track in Illinois that when we go there, we're turning 9-second laps. It's insane. Fifth mile. The late models go there. They'll be on flow this summer. Lucas goes there.
They have one of their Hell Tour races there.
Hell Tour's there. Herald and Review 100, I believe.
Yeah.
That's
Fairbury. That's the tour that I used to like to follow.
Hell Tour. Billy dominated the Hell Tour.
Yeah, he was the guy.
He is the Hell Tour.
So that's Shannon what we would do. We would just roll with them because you knew Moyer was going to be there.
Yeah, Shannon's got over 100 wins. I was hoping Shannon was going to win last. I was happy to see one of the Simpsons win last night, Iowa guys. But Shannon,
I feel like you'd probably be a Ryan Gustin guy.
I mean, I like seeing. Ryan never raced a ton. He kind of went the USRA route instead of the IMCA route, and I was more IMCA with Boone Marshalltown. But I like seeing him do well because, boy, I've announced his, Jimmy and Janae and Richie announced hundreds of their races over the years.
Yeah, I saw Gustin. He's still to this day put on one of the best shows I've ever seen. It was at the Silver Dollar Nationals at I-80.
Okay.
God, 10, 12 years ago. He had just gotten in a late model like a year before. And I want to say he passed 20 cars. I think he got second.
He can wheel.
It was incredible. Because the thing was, I knew who he was. Nobody in that crowd really knew this guy other than the real
USMTS fans.
Correct. Well, and he had a USMTS car there too, so they were the support show.
Okay.
For the late models for the Lucas Oil, and Gustin put on and he did that last night too.
He was in the mix last night until he got that flat right rear. I think it was.
He jumped the cushion.
Got over.
Yeah. Okay. So your real passion is the Hawks. I wanted to talk about this along with the Murphy thing. So where are you at on Iowa right now? Are you if the Iowa thing feels interesting to me because when I was doing talk radio in Des Moines, y'all won 10 games 2 years ago, and everybody was just pissed. And here I am, I just would kill for a 10-win season. And you guys are this whole thing sucks. We can't play offense. We just won this bowl game. It doesn't matter. I just feel like your fan base, Blake, you guys are never happy with anything.
I agree. The whole offensive coordinator deal with Brian Ferentz drives me insane. I'm like, for 20 years, we could have Nick Saban running our offense and it's going to look the same. It is what it is. Unfortunately, I was built on defense and punting is winning, but.
Yeah,
I think growing up I'd have been frustrated, but as I've gotten older, I don't know. I've listened to my dad harp on me for years of you need to appreciate it because Dad was going to Iowa City in the 70s, 60s, and 70s when Frank Lauderber is going 0-11. So he appreciates it, but I still get mad when they lose. I don't handle when they lose very well. I'll admit it. It doesn't ruin my day like it used to when I was growing up, and we had football season tickets going home or growing up, so the drive back to Newton was an hour, and I got a lot of drives, so. It wasn't pleasant because I was in a bad mood. My mom was mad at me because I was in a bad mood because the Hawks lost, and she would be pretty upset with me for letting that affect my day. Now it's like an hour, and unless it's an Iowa State loss, then I'm like, that really grinds my gears.
I get it when little brother starts just tweaking you a little bit,
it's like the Nebraska loss this year. Chris Krug that announces at Knoxville, huge Nebraska fan. He gives me a hard time about them when I say every once in a while you got to let little brother win. 7 in a row gets boring.
It's when little brother starts kicking your ass all the time is when it becomes a problem.
The rise of Iowa State athletics the last decade has been impressive to me. I mean, you look at where Iowa State was, say, in 2008 to where they are now, 15 years.
It's a totally different. I was telling Hassel this on our show yesterday that. He said he hadn't been to Trice in 10 years. Have you been to Trice lately?
No, I'd say it's probably been 10 years since I was in college. I'd say
you'd be shocked.
My brother,
it looks
I guess,
like a totally different place.
I've been to Ames, but not to a game there. My brother graduated vet school at Iowa State in 2019. So I was back. I came back for his graduation, and that was it right there at the graduation was there at the CY Stevens, I think it was. Or
Yep.
CY Stevens?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it's totally different. Like it doesn't even look like the same stadium, the same setup.
Now you got that
compared to when I was in
bridge.
college. The bridge is elite. Honestly, I get a little chubby every time I drive underneath it.
my three of my high school buddies that we're all really close. We talk every day. They're 3 Iowa State fans, so I hear it from them all the time. And I texted them yesterday. I said, "Guys, I don't know if you've watched Two Guys Named Chris today, but a lot of bridge talk, And that was a mistake right out of the gates. Mistake. I shouldn't even have brought it up.
It's so funny that thing is like, because it is a cool bridge. It looks cool. Like it's neat. Like when you drive in there, it and it's dark, and that thing's all lit up, and you got the stadium. It is beautiful.
What a welcome to campus too. I mean, it's
that's the whole point of it. Is they did this whole deal like 10 years ago where they got a grant by the Riemann Gardens family and they wanted to beautify the entrance to campus or something like that. And they've really done that. But then this bridge thing took on a life of its own. Like everybody, like it has its own Twitter feed.
I mean, I saw you were hating on the Baylor Bridge just an hour ago.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Or the river.
It's a smelly river. There's probably dead bodies in it.
I mean,
horrible.
The Iowa River is probably the same way on the campus of the University of Iowa. I mean, I through the years stopped on you couldn't pay me to swim in that river. I'll say that much.
Oh God, no. Is that the river that the kids won't cross to go to the basketball games?
Yeah, that is the one that they will not cross to go to the basketball games. I don't blame them. I mean, that river's disgusting. Everything's beautiful in Iowa City outside of that river.
It's not beautiful in Iowa City.
It's the wonderful.
I feel like we need to have a part 2 of this. I grew up an Iowa fan, but I didn't like my visit there. But you got to realize, I grew up in small town Iowa where, cornfields everywhere. Like Iowa City felt like a city to me.
Yeah.
Once I was going there and considering living there, where Ames, it just felt like I can see why, demographically, why people choose to go or Ames. Obviously, with the agriculture, there's more people that are interested in going to Iowa State. But I don't think I could have made it at Iowa.
Oh, I grew up Iowa fan, die hard, and I always wanted to go to Iowa. And my mom was just adamant, "You're not going to the University of Iowa. You're not going to survive."
I don't think I could have.
I'm a very social person, so college a lot for me was going out, and it was going out first, studying.
Where did you go?
I went to UNI, so I graduated from UNI in 2013.
Okay.
So I told my mom I graduated.
So you're one of those purple hawks.
That's what people say. Yeah, So I went to UNI, and UNI was perfect for me, honestly. I wanted to go to a big school and live that, the bigger school life. I didn't want to go to a small school, but it allowed me to kind of get that. But my major e-media there and broadcasting was small enough that I could focus because I'm a little scatterbrained.
I get it. I feel like we're kind of kindred spirits here.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time. This was a blast for me. You're considerably younger than me, but you're a guy who, I didn't know we had all these connections in our past until recently. But I've watched you. I have I'm an admirer of anybody who can hack it in the motor racing, because I know I couldn't have. And it's just I'm so passionate about it, and I love what you guys are doing across the board, and anything I can do in my small little way to help grow your sport, just let me know, okay?
We appreciate it. Hopefully we'll get you to Flow Racing Night in America at Marshalltown here. Well, I think May 12th, I want to say.
Oh, man. If
the Outlaws at Knoxville next weekend.
Is that next week? Oh,
That's
man.
weekend.
I got a big racing weekend, because then the SLMR is at Stewart, the late models,
I
on
saw that,
Sunday.
Stewart at late models at Stewart. There's 360 sprint cars at Stewart later this year.
So you're telling me I go racing 3 nights next weekend?
Yeah.
All within an hour of where I live.
An hour at home, yeah.
That's
I'll be back home for Knoxville next week. So
now you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
Now you're speaking my language.
Dingus is calling.
Dingus State.
I couldn't be more in. Someone's got to do quality control on Busch Light there. Make sure they're serving it cold enough.
I'm your man. I'm your man.
I'll be there.
And you tell, it'll creep them out, but you tell your late model guys at Flow that I'd probably be like awestruck by those guys. Those are my.
We'll have to get you. I mean, you need to come to our come hang out at our Flow Racing Night in America race. Rigsby won't be there, but DJ and Ben will be there.
Oh, I'll be there for sure.
Come hang out with me in the infield.
Well, last year I pulled my truck up about 3 hours before the gates open, and I just drank Busch Light in the back of my truck leading up to the race.
I wouldn't even know. I didn't even know. I mean, I was all
well,
over
you
that.
Can't miss it. It's this giant Cyclone Fanatic truck. Like it's.
I probably tried to tune it out. Honestly,
no, I don't blame you. All right, brother. Well, thank you again. You got a great story. I'm glad we could kind of help tell it here tonight. You can watch Blake and the All Stars all summer long on Flow Racing, and that actually too. Correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of wrestling fans in the state.
Yeah.
If you have a Flow Wrestling, it's the same subscription, right?
I watched wrestling all winter long on Flow, and I think we got 25 sports on Flow.
It's incredible.
It's amazing, and it gets
they are
access
brilliant.
To all of it.
What they've done, compiling all of these niche sports and focusing on things that people are super passionate about, but don't get the coverage in the mainstream media. It's a brilliant business model.
Shoot, last year I watched Drake at their postseason tournament in Daytona. That was on Flow Hoops.
Yeah, they'll take those like really small women's. I watched Iowa State women. They were playing in some tournament.
Athletic league, I want to say.
Yeah,
Men's
I don't even
contract.
know.
I mean, they got
it's a great
baseball.
business model. You're working with really smart people. So Blake, thank you so much for your time, man. We'll be in touch. All right, I'm gonna bother you to live vicariously through you here now that we've got each other's contact information.
You always got this with me, so I'm always a call or text away.
All right, brother. I'll be watching you tonight. His name is Blake Anderson. He does the marketing and announcing for the Tony Stewart All-Star Sprint Car Series. All right, a really quick teaser. Next week's podcast is one you're not going to want to miss. It is the reunion show with Ross Peterson. The reunion show. We didn't break up. I left KXNO about a year ago from now, and Ross is going to come in, and we are going to catch up on everything over the last year. That could be like a 3-hour podcast. I'm just warning you. Thanks to everybody for watching and listening here on Iowa Everywhere. Hope you have an awesome weekend.